What's going on, you guys? This is Camron Hurt. I am here live giving you guys your Black News Briefing, our news, our way, brought to you by Historically Black Sense. So, you guys, we're just going to jump into some of the biggest news stories of the week. And we also have a special feature co-host here on the show today, a contributor. So you guys will get to hear from him a little bit later on in the show. So the first thing we're going to jump right into is the shooting that happened in Brooklyn yesterday. Yesterday, there was a mass shooting that left over 10 people injured. Thank God nobody was killed, but this is the most bizarre story that I've heard of in recent weeks. You see, 62-year-old Frank James decided to open fire in a subway car. Now, we live in America, so somebody opened fire in a crowded place, that's normal. That's not hard to digest. What's hard to digest is what happened after. You see, after he opened fire and police were called, the first officer on the scene, his walkie-talkie didn't work, and then he forgot to tell the train to stop. How do you forget to tell a train not to go? You have a mass murderer, mass shooter on it. I mean, I get it. Line of fire. You're thinking a million things at once. But hey, the shooter. No, just curious. But then it also gets even weirder because the cameras in the subway station stopped working. None of them worked. They got nothing. And then the shooter himself called in the tip that helped lead to him getting captured as well. I just want to throw this figure out here. The NYPD has a multi-billion, with a B, dollar budget. As a matter of fact, the NYPD's budget is bigger than the budget for the army of Ukraine. Bigger than an entire army that's right now, fighting off a superpower. The NYPD has so much money, they even have a submarine. A few of them. But what's the good of a billion-dollar police force when crime is going up? What sense does it make? Where are we at with gun violence here in America? I mean, I think the answer is clear. When Sandy Hook happened and we decided that it was okay for little kids in elementary school to be shot dead and us not do anything about gun laws, I think we decided then where our heart lied on gun reform. That didn't stop President Biden this week from trying to pass common sense gun reform legislation. I don't really think it's reform. I just think it's more of a mandate to do what's already there. There will require certain guns will now require a certain level of background checks, which, okay. Democrats have this as a win. I don't know. I just feel like it's so minuscule. It's nothing but posturing. You're not really trying to do anything about the gun violence. And the thing that Americans have to reconcile is gun violence is an America issue. It's not a world issue. The only place where gun violence is a thing is war countries and America. All right, let's keep on moving all the way down to our good old buddy, Elon Musk. Yes, Elon. I got to talk about Elon last week. Elon had bought the biggest share in Twitter last week, and he had been offered to come sit on the board. Well, yesterday, Elon announced that he would, in fact, not be joining the board, which I thought was weird, because if you remember last week, I said, of course he'll join the board. He's not stupid. One thing still holds. Elon isn't stupid. You see, Elon didn't join the board because Elon wants to buy the board. That's right. Today, he offered to buy Twitter for over $40 million. 40 billion, billion with a B. So Elon's not looking to sit on anybody's board. He wants to own the board. What implications does it have for Elon Musk, again, owning Twitter? What does that mean? I think we already explored just, his personal view of things and how that can affect Twitter's guidelines. But we've heard a lot about, and especially since the invasion of Ukraine, oligarchs, especially in Russia. But what if America has an oligarch problem? In America, most of our wealth is controlled by the top 3%. What does that mean for the redistribution of wealth countrywide? And what does it mean when our rich can only get richer? And I mean, one of the things that we've seen with the ascension of Donald Trump into the presidency is they can now get even more politically powerful. So what are we setting ourselves up for? How long before some cry for Elon for president? I wonder if it's coming, don't you? All right, let's talk about our good allies across the pond, Great Britain. You see, Great Britain's prime minister is getting a lot of flack for his new asylum policy. Boris Johnson announced today that he would be sending, 3 guesses on what type, of asylum seekers to Rwanda should they cross or come into the country illegally or legally. They will no longer be able to wait for asylum in the country of Britain. They will have to be flown to Rwanda and wait for processing in Rwanda. Now, some things to note. Rwanda is a beautiful, flourishing country in East Africa. It's long past its days of violence. Its GDP is growing. Its economy is thriving. It has an amazing nightlife. Rwanda is nothing to shake a stick at. However, we're so sick of seeing more of the same in different forms that we have to call out BS when we hear BS. Because I bet you no Ukrainian will get flown over to Rwanda. No, Ukrainians will be welcomed in Great Britain with open arms. 3 guesses who on the type of immigrant that will be sent to Rwanda. I also worry if this could also play with some political and ethnic interference. Great Britain is at their own discretion can send whoever they want to Rwanda if they're seeking asylum. They have a large influx of not just African, sub-Saharan African asylum seekers. They also have a large influx of Middle Eastern and Arab asylum seekers. What we see right now on the continent of Africa is what I called last week, an economic colonization of Africa. And that doesn't stop just with getting in your business. You also may have to change the demographics of certain countries so that you can have certain policies be able to be passed. And it hasn't been unlike European powers to forcibly import populations into a region that they are not native to in order to politically control. We must keep an eye on this because, again, 1, why for some and not for all? And then 2, what's the end game? What's the effect going to be on the local population? How many are you talking about sending? And will other European countries follow suit? These are all questions that are pertinent and that will play a big role in the development of East Africa in the next 20 years. So just to pass this news story off as news as usual would be just short-sighted and foolish. But in making sure that we are always looking at every factor that can affect our global stability. And an already Asianifying, if you will, of East Africa with an influx of Chinese businessmen and Chinese population and Chinese infrastructure already in the region. And now you'll have an influx of that Arab population also in the region. Just something to look at. Let's move on to our next story, which is Cuba Gooding Jr. Yes, 90s star Cuba Gooding Jr. You may know him from different things such as Pearl Harbor, radio, and most recently, Lord, what was he in? I don't know, I forgot him. But Cuba Gooding, y'all know Cuba. I remember Cuba personally because of his brother Omar Gooding, who was on Smart Guy. Mo, yes, Mo's my favorite. But for Cuba, let's get into it. He actually accepted a guilty plea for forcible touching, in which he admitted to forcibly kissing without consent a waitress at a bar. Why is this news? This is news on 2 levels. Because this really exposes a hell of a lot of hypocrisy on both sides. Let's dive in. A man forcibly kissing a woman. How many of us, raise your hand, if you've ever seen that on TV, in a cartoon, and it was laughed off. Okay. So in a way, is it possible that we as a society have become desensitized to that being a form of sexual harassment? And if we have, how have we let voice of women be taken out of the conversation about what's welcome to their body, to their lips? How does that happen? How have we never sat down to think about what implications this has on our young women, on our daughters, on our nieces? When we sit back and we think about influence and power, and we think how he took this plea to stay out of jail, this was not all he was accused of. This is just what he agreed to. So when we look at somebody with power and influence and a male being able to take charges and get them lowered, we can understand why women don't always report sexual abuse when it happens to them. What I think is also important to notice, though, is that it's a Black man. I'm not saying that this behavior is acceptable if any man does it. What I'm saying is the Black community has been raising an alarm that rules for us are only rules for us. You will not try them. You do not have the same energy when it's somebody else. We've all seen recently, or many of us have seen recently, a new video surfacing of Jim Carrey forcibly kissing an actress on stage at an award show. Nothing thought of that, though. What's literally the difference? I mean, you could say one decided to press charge, one didn't. But if that actress felt empowered to press charges, what would have come of it for real? Would it have gone anywhere? We know the answer to that. We know the answer to that. All right, moving right along. It's another week. So that means, you know what it is? Another threat from Russia. The loudest guy in the room is still screaming for no reason, and we don't really hear you, bro. We don't hear you. Russia today basically issued a nuclear threat for the Baltic region. Yes, with Baltic states looking to join NATO possibly, including Sweden, Norway. Russia is boosting its bravado and saying that they now will move nukes into the area if that happens and will respond in kind. What I think is beautiful about this story is the president of Lithuania kind of said it best, paraphrasing. He basically said, "You're a liar. You already have nukes in the area. We're not worried about it." Sweden answered to tell Russia, try some new threats. We're used to them already. You see, the one thing that Russia didn't do by going into Ukraine is make any country that is not in NATO feel good about not being in NATO. And he's caused a fear in the region now, especially for countries that were former USSR blocs or share a border with Russia, that they need that extra protection. They need that extra guarantee. They need that extra nuclear threat. And so instead of running away from NATO, Russia has acted as a lightning beam, bringing countries to NATO. Countries that had long just been content with being partners of NATO are now saying that within weeks, they expect to have a decision on whether or not they will seek to join NATO membership. This is a failed invasion of Ukraine on so many levels, and it will be the biggest legacy for Vladimir Putin that he failed at this. All right, and we're going to wrap up talking about the new video released out of Michigan that shows the killing of Patrick Loyola. If you haven't seen the video, don't. I never encourage people to watch videos of somebody getting shot. It's not normal. It's inhumane. We're not meant to see that, so don't watch it. But I can tell you what happens in the video. He's pulled over, and upon getting pulled over, he immediately jumps out of the car. Jumps out of the car, hands at his side, unarmed. Seems very confused, extremely confused. The cop is very off-put that he's jumped out of the car, but the cop is not overreacting yet. And the police officer is letting him know, hey, like, get back in the car, get back in the car. He's not getting in the car. Again, the police officer is not putting his hands on him yet. And he's like, okay, do you know? He's like, why did you pull me over? The police officer lets him know, your plates don't match your car. So can you give me your license? He goes in the car. He does not. He says his license in the car. He does not come out with his license. The police officer says, all right, and tries to handcuff him. He begins to resist, runs away. They get into a tussle on the ground, in which the police officer seems like he is overpowered. The police officer tries to deploy his taser twice, but Patrick is holding the taser and he doesn't get it off. While they're on the ground tussling, Patrick, I believe, is on his stomach. The police officer is on his back, reaches for his gun, pulls, shoots, kills Patrick. When we hear about cases like these, there's two reactions. There's, you shouldn't resist. And then there is, of course, the cry from the minority community that we shouldn't die. And I want to walk through both of those in this case because I think they're both very applicable. One of the things that was mentioned very early on in the video is the police officer could tell that he seemed confused and asked, do you speak English? Patrick replied that he did. I don't know, as the airing date of this, what his degree of fluency in English was, but he was an immigrant from the African Republic of Congo. And so, again, we don't know if language barrier could have played a role in his confusion and his fear and everything else. America does have a reputation around the world of killing Black men, especially at the hands of the police. It is a badge that the rest of the world has given us. It's why half of the world now does not take us seriously when we talk about human rights violations. It's true. All right. It's not something that we can just hide from in our American bubble anymore. It's true. The rest of the world looks at us as monsters at times. I do think that it becomes a thing where, though, at some point, when you are resisting from an officer, unfortunately, we as Black men, we know that means that you're grounds to die. You're grounds to die. I don't think you'll find anybody in the Black community who will say, hey, he was right for resisting. Hey, he was right for fighting back. What we'll say, though, is, if he was white, would he have died? We see evidence time and time again of radicalized white men wielding weapons via machetes, via guns, via pipe bombs, and get taken alive. We've seen it to where they've committed mass shootings and been taken for Burger King. I don't know that I believe that it was I know that I believe that it was excessive amount of force, because regardless, preserve human life. At that point, had the officer had waited for backup, they had the car, they would have caught him. De-escalation doesn't seem to be a priority of police training, which I don't think is the fault of the police officers themselves. I think it's the fault of the politicians and the commissioners that we keep electing into office that are not getting these officers different training. But de-escalation doesn't seem to be their mode of operation. But as de-escalation isn't the mode of operation, we have to play to our safety. We've all had the talk. If you're a Black man, for sure, where your parents are like, if you go out, if you see the police, this is how you react. This is what I want you to do. As of right now, that's still our best line of defense. Make it out to live another day. But I do think, again, resisting arrest can never be an excuse for taking somebody's life, especially when they're unarmed. All right, you guys, so that's going to wrap me up for this part of the segment, but I'm about to kick it over to a Jackson State accounting major who calls both Pine Bluff and Houston home. And he's going to give you guys some really, really, really important news too. And I think it's coming from a different generational perspective. So I am so excited to introduce you guys to Javon for your current events.
Well, I am so honored to be here. I am so honored to kick it off, to let you guys know I am Javon Blair. I am the chief correspondent for Historically Black Sense, and I have a few topics to talk about. And I would love to have you guys' opinion as I talk about it as well too. First, we're going to shine the light on one of my peers and colleagues at Jackosn State, Amisha Williams Holiday, WNBA. Amisha Holiday is a senior out of Jackosn State, has selected in the third round, 25th overall by the Inner Fever, making her the first HBCU player to be drafted into the WNBA in 20 years. It is in her words, it's an honor and a dream come true. I just want us to stay in this moment right here, because at Jackosn State, we are making history again, though, not just far as with sports or anything, but we is making history far as when we come to academically as well, too. I want to talk about the midterm election. We need to start preparing for our local midterm election. We need to make sure, again, though, and primary season is approaching. You need to make sure that your state, if they have already participated in the primary, we need to be a part of the process and a part of the story. Again, though, I can't listen. If anybody that has a deep impact over my family's life, I have to be a part of that process. So with that being said, y'all, we need to do our due diligence, our civic duty, and get out there and go vote. I know I have my aunt Sim, who is currently watching all the way from Atlanta. You can be in Atlanta, Nashville, New Hampshire, Little Rock, Arkansas, Houston, Texas. I want first of all thank you guys for support, for bringing me this far. And I would like to talk about Alumni Connections as well. So Alumni Connection is where, if you are a proud HBCU alum, you know you are sworn in particularly to give back to your HBCUs. Again, though, we have to make sure we are giving to our HBCUs. The HBCUs are the fast growing in professions. HBCUs produce more doctors, more lawyers. We know what HBCU do, so we have to do our due and give back to our local HBCUs as well too. And I would like to just have a moment with my colleague over there, Mr. Cam, about the stop moment, with the police interaction with the police. And again, though, as a Black male, we have had those conversations, those hard, difficult conversations. Any Black, like, is a Black male, I know me, he be a friend, a colleague, a relative. We have all had that conversation, right? And let me tell you something. We know what to do when a police approaches, because we have had this conversation multiple times. And sometimes it's unfortunate. Sometimes it can be, you don't have to even done anything. You can just be the fish, basically you the prey. They hungry. They ready to eat. And so they just see you in sight. They just see you in sight. And not only, and I'm not trying to scare you guys, but we need to be on the defense, guys. We got to make sure we stay recording. Again, though, the phone right now in our generation is the number one tool to a conviction, to a guilty verdict.
My mic was muted. I'm over here talking to you, Javon, but I was saying to the audience, be aware too that police officers now, at a form to get around being recorded, are blasting music when they know they're being recorded. That way, if you put it online, hopefully it'll get copyright infringement and take it down. Pro tip, you could always speed up or slow down the sound of your video, and guess what? You'll be able to get past it. But do be advised about that. And Javon, you're right. Keep empowering them, because there are tools that you can use to actively fight back. and you recording is one.
That's right. That actually the tool. That's actually the tool. We got to make sure we are, again, though, using our phone as the number one issue as well, too. Again, though, we don't want them getting more things to hurt us on. So we got to be ready. Again, though, we are getting convictions. The conviction in the law is on our side. Again, once you have your phone recording. And then if you don't have your phone record, then that's a different story and hard to get a conviction. But I want to say thank you, guys. I enjoyed my time here as well, too. I'm going to kick it back over to Cam. I am going to be here every Thursday. More fire, more news. I'm keeping it black. I'm keeping it
energy.
Fun. I am
energy.
Javon Blair from Jackosn State, and I'm going to now kick it over to my Cam.
All right, you guys. I do want to. I think that that's such an interesting conversation because so often we have this conversation about police brutality, and it's clear negligence. It's very much clear negligence on the part of the cop. But I do think that when you look at this one, you see what in the legal community you call reasonable doubt, which is what you're going to be able to raise that this guy's intention from the start was to kill this guy. And that's what I'm speaking to specifically is reasonable doubt. And how do we eliminate that as an excuse? How do we eliminate reasonable doubt as a tool? Because you may very well do everything right, and you may very well have your phone out and recording, and you will still not get a conviction. Be ready. But we know it's 10 times harder to get one if you're not recording. We know that we wouldn't have probably got justice for Ahmaud had there not been those videos. We damn sure know we wouldn't have got justice for George Floyd had it not been for videos. So just different ways that, you know, we can arm ourselves. And I'm really interested in that part of the conversation is how do we fight back reasonably where we're not putting ourselves in danger to die. One thing I want to do is I want to open the floor for anybody out there in the audience who wants to say anything, ask anything, whatever, what have you. But while we wait for that to come in, Javon, I have a question for you, my good sir.
Go ahead.
So I'm out of college. I done did it, been there, did that. I know what everything looking like. Mm-hmm. Are students right now paying attention to loan debt crisis with college loans? Are you guys, because me and my friends, like, well, again, we're all out of college in our professions. We're talking about Biden and we're talking about when is he going to forgive student loans? Is that a concern for you guys right now who are currently attending college?
It is a big concern right now. I'm going to be very honest. This is a big concern.
Okay.
And I'm going to explain this in a way that you can, I think the American people out there can understand. Again, though, student loan debt and how student loan debt happens. I want to remind you how it happens. If you don't come from a family that can push you through college, you're going to pull those loans. Now, you're going to pull those loans. And I want to also remind you, if your GPA is a 3.5 or any over 3.0, you are good. You are eligibility for scholarship.
Hold on. I think we should highlight the word eligibility because that does not mean that you will get.
Right. It doesn't mean you're going to get it, but it make it a good chance you can send those loans back.
Okay.
So I want to, as a accounting major, I like to look at numbers.
Okay.
And I like to see my numbers on paper.
Go ahead.
And calculate it. Okay. And I'm a type of person I'm just gonna say it how I'm gonna just say it. We also we need to take advantage of that Thurgood Marshall at law, that fund. We have to take advantage of that scholarship fund.
Tell people about it.
Huh?
Tell people about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thurgood Marshall Fund was founded back in 1985 to assist particularly HBCU students with scholarships. And just say if you was coming into fall 2022, they would assist you with fall 2022 and fall of spring of 2023. It would assist you. And secondly, you got to make sure you apply early. You got to make sure you apply early because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. You got to make sure you apply early. You got to apply early. And that's what take advantage of those loans. Take advantage of those scholarships. Say yes to the scholarships, say no to the loans.
Okay.
That's my take on it.
I hear that. And again, with you being in a younger generation, you guys have so much. And I remember going through, I was in college when the recession in 08 happened.
Yes.
And now with everything kind of getting poised up, please don't tell me how old you were in 08 because I'm going to feel so old. But anyways, with coming out of the pandemic, now we're in supply chain crisis. Now we have over 65 conflicts going on the globe right now with the threat of nuclear war in 2 of those conflicts. Are you guys worried about the economy? Because I could also say me and my friends, I feel like we skated through the recession of 08 being in college and we didn't really feel the impact. We didn't really think about it. It didn't hit us that hard. But for you guys, this is so different, especially because social media is a thing now the way it wasn't back when I first started college. So what's it like for you guys now with that?
Well, again, we are deeply concerned. And I'm going to tell you this as well, too. I met the vice president over supply chain at Walmart.
Okay.
And he told me what they dealing with. Again, though, this is tough on everybody right now. Again, though, inflation, we all didn't expect we was going to be in a global 100-year pandemic.
It didn't feel like 100 years, did it?
We didn't expect this.
Right.
We didn't expect this. But these are, I'm going to be very honest, these are the consequences that come with a good administration. They got vaccines in people's arms. They haven't really addressed I feel those kitchen table talk, which is student loan debt. They haven't addressed that. Right. But again, though, I don't think I'm going to be very honest. If you forgive student loan debt, something else going to come up. But that's where you
can't convince me of that now. Now that I've seen you sent out $1 billion to Ukraine in less than a month. You can't convince me that it's got to come from somewhere. But this is what I do think is happening. Right. I do think that student loan debt will be a Hail Mary that the Democrats use either in the midterms or Biden uses to get reelected. I think it'll be forgiven. I think we're just not going to see it until that term because you see he keeps pushing back when repayment starts again. So I think he's going to do that up until that point. And if he can do that, by all means, you're playing a dangerous game, Joe. But as long as you forgive him in the end, I can get behind you, Joe. Just forgive him in the end. But speaking of the end, that is going to end our show for tonight. We will see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Javon, anything you want to say to the people?
I want to tell you people out there to stay involved, stay engaged, and let's head to the polls in 22.
Hey, let's head to the polls. Also, we want to give a big shout out to the big 3 Abrahamic faiths that will all 3 be celebrating this weekend. We have Passover for the Jewish community. We have Ramadan for the Islamic community. And we have Easter for the Christian community. So just happy Passover, Ramadan Mubarak, happy Easter to all and everyone who celebrates. Talk to you guys later and see you next week.